The red and blue lights flashed in my rearview mirror, slicing through the midnight calm like a warning I couldn't ignore. My heart slammed against my ribs, each beat screaming, "You're screwed, Riley." I wasn't speeding, not much anyway, but something about those lights felt personal, like they were chasing me, not just my beat-up motorcycle. I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder of Route 17, the engine's rumble fading into the chirping of summer crickets. The small town of Willow Creek, Virginia, wasn't exactly known for its nightlife, so the empty road stretching into the dark felt like a stage set just for this moment. I tugged off my helmet, shaking out my short, sweaty hair, and waited. The cop car's door opened and out stepped her. Officer Elena Martinez, according to the nameplate glinting under the street lamp. She was tall, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun, her uniform crisp like she'd ironed it with military precision. But her eyes, God, her eyes were soft, like they held secrets too heavy for that badge. "Evening," she said, her voice low, steady, but with an edge I couldn't place. "You know why I pulled you over?" I smirked, leaning back against my bike, trying to play it cool despite the nervous sweat prickling my neck. "Enlighten me, officer. Was I going too fast for Willow Creek's finest?" Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close enough to make my stomach flip. "Your taillight's out," she said, stepping closer. The flashlight in her hand flicked on, but she didn't aim it at my bike. Instead, she let it linger on me, the beam catching the scuff marks on my leather jacket, the ink peeking out from my sleeve. "And you looked like you needed a reason to stop." I blinked, thrown off. "A reason to stop?" My voice came out sharper than I meant, but something about her tone felt like it wasn't about traffic violations. At 28, I'd spent years dodging cops, rules, and anyone who tried to pin me down. Running was my thing, in my bike, in my life. But this woman, with her steady gaze and that damn uniform, made me want to stay still. "Riley Harper," she said, reading my name off some invisible script. My license was still in my pocket, so how the hell did she know? "I've seen you around. You're not exactly subtle, tearing through town on this thing." She nodded at my motorcycle, a 1980s Kawasaki I'd rebuilt myself. "You ever think about slowing down?" I crossed my arms, feeling the weight of her stare. "Not really my style, Officer Martinez." I emphasized her name, testing it, liking how it rolled off my tongue. "You gonna write me up or what?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint citrus of her perfume, a strange contrast to the starch of her uniform. "I don't want your license," she said, her voice dropping. "I want to know why you're running so fast." My breath caught. This wasn't about a busted taillight. This was something else, something that made my pulse race and my palms itch to reach for her. But I didn't. Not yet. The next morning, Willow Creek buzzed with its usual small-town rhythm. Diner chatter, kids on bikes, the hum of a lawnmower somewhere down Main Street. I sat at the counter of Joe's Diner, nursing a black coffee, my mind replaying last night. Elena Martinez. I'd seen her before, patrolling the town square or directing traffic at the county fair. But last night was different. She wasn't just a cop doing her job. She'd seen me, like she'd peeled back my layers without even trying. "Hey Riley, you look like you saw a ghost," said Marla, the diner's owner, sliding a plate of pancakes my way. At 50, Marla was the closest thing I had to family in this town, ever since I'd rolled in 2 years ago with nothing but my bike and a duffel bag. "Not a ghost," I muttered, poking at the pancakes. "Just a cop." Marla raised an eyebrow, her silver hoop earrings catching the light. "A cop? What did you do this time?" "Nothing," I said too quickly. "Taillights out, apparently." She snorted. "Yeah, right. I know that look, kid." "Spill." I didn't. I couldn't. How do you explain that a routine traffic stop felt like the start of something you're not sure you're ready for? Instead, I shoved a forkful of pancake in my mouth and changed the subject. "You hear about the town council meeting? They're still fighting over that pride flag." Marla's face softened, but her eyes stayed sharp. "Yeah. Bunch of old-timers clutching their pearls over a rainbow. You going?" I shrugged. "Not my scene." Truth was, I'd never been one for waving flags or joining causes. Growing up in foster homes, I'd learned early that standing out wasn't always safe. Being a lesbian in a small town like this? That was a spotlight I avoided. But something about last night about Elena made me wonder if hiding was still an option. By noon, I was back at my garage wrist-deep in engine grease, fixing a customer's Chevy. The shop was my sanctuary, all oil stains and metal clanks, where I could drown out the world. But today my focus was shot. Every creak of the door made me look up, half expecting to see Elena standing there, badge and all. And then she was. "Harper," she said, leaning against the doorframe, out of uniform now. Jeans, a fitted gray t-shirt, her hair loose and spilling over her shoulders. She looked less like a cop and more like someone I could have met at a bar, someone I'd flirt with until closing time. "Officer Martinez," I said, wiping my hands on a rag, trying to keep my cool. "You stalking me now?" She laughed, a sound that hit me like a shot of whiskey, warm, sharp, dangerous. "Call it community outreach," she said, stepping inside. "Heard you're the best mechanic in town. Thought I'd check it out." I raised an eyebrow. "You got a car that needs fixing? Or is this another excuse to mess with me?" She held my gaze, unflinching. "Maybe I just wanted to see you." My heart did that stupid flip again. I tossed the rag onto the workbench, stepping closer. "You don't strike me as the type to waste time, Elena. What's this really about?" She hesitated, like she was weighing her words. "You're not the only one who's been running," she said finally. "But last night, I don't know. Something about you made me want to stop." The air between us crackled, heavy with everything we weren't saying. I wanted to close the gap to see how close I could get before one of us broke. But before I could, my phone buzzed on the workbench, shattering the moment. A text from Marla. "Trouble at the council meeting. You might want to show up." I cursed under my breath. "I gotta go," I said, grabbing my jacket. "You coming? Or is this above your pay grade?" Elena's eyes lit up, like she'd been waiting for an invitation. "Lead the way, Harper." The town hall was a powder keg. A crowd of 50 packed the small room, voices clashing over the proposal to fly a pride flag at the county courthouse. On one side, a handful of locals, mostly younger, some queer, some allies, argued for inclusion. On the other, the usual suspects, older residents, red-faced and quoting scripture, insisting the flag was divisive. I stood at the back, arms crossed, Elena beside me. She wasn't in uniform, but her presence still carried weight, like she could quiet the room with a look. "This happen often," she whispered. "Every time someone mentions change," I muttered. "Welcome to Willow Creek." The mayor, a nervous guy named Ted, tried to keep order, but the room was spiraling. A woman in a floral dress stood up, her voice shaking. "This town's about family values. We don't need that flag shoving sin in our faces." I felt my jaw tighten, the old instinct to bolt kicking in. But then a kid no older than 16, with a buzz cut and a rainbow pin on their backpack, stood up. "I'm tired of hiding who I am," they said, voice cracking. "You don't get to decide I don't belong here." The room went quiet for a split second, then erupted again. I glanced at Elena, expecting her to stay neutral, cop-like. But her eyes were on the kid, and there was something raw there, something personal. "You okay?" I asked, low enough that only she could hear. She nodded, but her jaw was tight. "I've been that kid," she said softly. "Grew up in a town like this. Took me years to stop hiding." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent so long running from foster homes, from rejection, from myself, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand still and fight. But standing there next to Elena, I felt something shift. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. The town hall meeting ended in a stalemate, voices hoarse and tempers frayed. No decision on the pride flag, just promises of further discussion. As the crowd spilled onto the street, I felt the weight of it all, the kid's trembling courage, the venom in that woman's words, the way Elena's hand brushed mine as we walked out, like an anchor in the chaos. Outside, the summer air was thick, the kind that clings to your skin. Elena and I lingered by my bike, the street lamp casting long shadows. "You didn't say much in there," she said, her voice careful, like she was testing the waters. "Didn't need to," I replied, kicking at a pebble. "Words don't change minds like that. They just make noise." She tilted her head, studying me. "You don't strike me as the quiet type, Riley." I laughed, short and sharp. "Maybe I'm just tired of fighting battles I can't win." I swung my leg over my bike, ready to ride off, but her hand caught my wrist, gentle, but firm enough to stop me cold. "Don't," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "Don't run from this." I froze, her touch sending a jolt through me. From what? You? This town? The whole damn mess. My voice was rough, but I didn't pull away. From yourself, she said, stepping closer. I see you, Riley. You act like you don't care, but you do. You care so much it scares you. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but the words stuck in my throat. Because she wasn't wrong. Not even close. Instead, I leaned in just enough to feel the heat of her breath, to see the flicker of surprise in her eyes. And what about you, Elena? What are you running from? For a second, she didn't answer. Then her hand dropped and she took a step back, like she'd crossed a line she wasn't ready for. Come with me, she said instead, nodding toward her car parked across the street. There's something I want to show you. We drove in silence, her squad car cutting through the dark backroads of Willow Creek. I didn't ask where we were going, I didn't care. Something about being near her made the world feel quieter, like the noise in my head finally had a mute button. She pulled off onto a dirt path, the car bouncing over ruts until we reached a clearing by the river. The water glittered under the moonlight, and a single picnic table sat under a sprawling oak. This your secret hideout? I teased, climbing out of the car. Something like that, she said, grabbing a blanket from the trunk. She spread it on the grass, then sat, patting the space beside her. Used to come here when I was a kid. Only place I could think straight. I sat, leaving just enough space between us to feel safe, but not enough to stop the pull I felt toward her. You grew up here? I asked, surprised. She didn't seem like a small-town lifer. Born and raised, she said, her voice softening. Left for a while, joined the force in Richmond. Came back when my mom got sick. Thought I'd stay a year tops. That was 3 years ago. I nodded, piecing her together like a puzzle. So you're stuck here, playing hero in a town that doesn't deserve you. She laughed, but it was hollow. Hero? Hardly. Half the time, I'm just breaking up bar fights or writing tickets. But, I don't know. I thought I could make a difference. Show people like that kid tonight they're not alone. Her words hit me square in the chest. I'd spent so long keeping people at arm's length, I'd forgotten what it felt like to want to fight for someone else. You're braver than me, I admitted, staring at the river to avoid her eyes. I've been running since I was a kid. Foster homes, bad towns, worse people. Never stayed long enough to care. She turned to me, her face half lit by the moon. What made you stay in Willow Creek? I hesitated, the truth clawing its way up. Didn't have anywhere else to go, I said finally. Figured I'd fix bikes, keep my head down, move on when it got too heavy. But I trailed off, my eyes flicking to her. Lately, it's been harder to leave. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, the world was just us, the river's soft rush, the crickets, the way her hand found mine in the dark. Her fingers were warm, steady, and I didn't pull away this time. Riley, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not supposed to do this. I could lose my job, my place in this town. But I can't stop thinking about you. My heart pounded so loud I was sure she could hear it. I leaned closer, my lips brushing her ear as I whispered, then don't stop. The next week was a blur of stolen moments. A coffee at the diner, her hand grazing mine under the counter. A late-night ride on my bike, her arms wrapped tight around my waist. Every touch, every glance, felt like a secret we were both desperate to keep and desperate to shout. But secrets in Willow Creek don't stay buried long. It started with whispers. A neighbor saw us at the river. Someone else caught us laughing outside the garage. By the time the next council meeting rolled around, the gossip had spread like wildfire. That cop's getting too cozy with the biker girl, they said. Unprofessional, they called it. Unnatural. Elena didn't back down, though. She showed up to the meeting in uniform, standing tall as the same old arguments erupted over the pride flag. I sat in the back again, my stomach in knots. When a man in a trucker hat stood up, pointing at Elena, my blood ran cold. Officer Martinez, you're supposed to uphold the law, not parade around with her, he spat, jerking his head toward me. The room went quiet, all eyes on us. Elena's face didn't flinch, but I saw her hands tighten at her sides. My personal life is none of your business, Carl, she said, her voice steel. And neither is anyone else's in this room. The kid from the last meeting, the one with the rainbow pin, clapped first. Then a few others joined in, A small but defiant ripple. I wanted to cheer, to grab her hand and run, but I stayed rooted, my heart swelling with something I hadn't felt in years, pride. After the meeting, we slipped out to the parking lot, the tension still buzzing between us. You didn't have to do that, I said, my voice thick. Stand up for me like that. Yes, I did, she said, her eyes fierce. Because you're worth it, Riley. And so am I. I kissed her then, right there in the open, not caring who saw. Her lips were soft, urgent, like she'd been holding back as long as I had. When we pulled apart, breathless, she smiled a real, unguarded smile that made me believe in something bigger than myself. But as we stood there, wrapped in each other, a pair of headlights cut through the dark. A pickup truck slowed, its window rolling down. You'll regret this, Martinez, a voice called out before the truck sped off. My stomach dropped. This wasn't over. The truck's taillights faded into the night, but the threat hung in the air like smoke. I stood frozen in the town hall parking lot, Elena's hand still in mine, her warmth the only thing keeping me from bolting. Who was that? I asked, my voice tighter than I wanted. Elena's jaw clenched, her eyes scanning the dark. Probably just some loudmouth, she said, but her tone didn't match her words. Come on. Let's get out of here. We didn't talk about it on the drive back to my place. Her squad car felt like a fortress, but even that couldn't block out the unease curling in my gut. When we pulled up to my tiny apartment above the garage, she cut the engine and turned to me. Riley, you okay? I forced a grin, but it felt hollow. Peachy. Just another day in paradise. She didn't buy it. Her hand reached for mine, her thumb brushing my knuckles. You don't have to do that with me, she said. Act tough. I see you. Those words again. They cracked something open in me. Something I'd kept locked since I was a kid, bouncing between foster homes, learning to trust no one. I leaned across the console and kissed her, slow and deep, like I could pour everything I couldn't say into it. When we pulled back, her eyes were soft, but worry lingered in them. Stay with me tonight, I said before I could stop myself. She hesitated, glancing at the radio on her dash, like it might summon her back to duty. I'm on call, she said, but her voice wavered. If something happens, then you'll go. I cut in. But right now you're here. With me. She smiled, small but real, and followed me upstairs. My apartment was a mess, tools scattered on the table, takeout boxes piled in the sink, but Elena didn't seem to care. She sat on my worn-out couch, her hair loose, her guard down in a way that made my chest ache. We talked for hours about nothing and everything. Her mom's cooking, my first bike, the way Willow Creek felt like a cage and a home all at once. When she laughed, it was like the room got brighter. But the world outside didn't stop turning. At 2 a.m., her radio crackled, dispatching her to a disturbance downtown. Duty calls, she said, pulling her hair back into that neat bun, transforming back into Officer Martinez. Be careful, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. She kissed me, quick but fierce. Always am. I didn't sleep after she left. I sat by the window watching the street, my mind replaying that trucker's voice. You'll regret this. By morning, the news was all over town. Someone had spray-painted slurs across the courthouse, right where the pride flag would have gone. The message was clear. Willow Creek wasn't ready to change. I found Elena at the scene, her face grim as she took photos of the graffiti. This is personal, she said when she saw me, her voice low. They know about us. My stomach twisted. You think it was that guy from last night? Maybe. She rubbed her temple, exhaustion creeping into her posture. But it's not just him. It's this town. People talk, Riley. And they don't like what they're hearing. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that we could handle it, but the words felt empty. Instead, I grabbed a can of paint from my garage and started covering the graffiti, stroke by stroke. Elena joined me, her brush moving in sync with mine. We didn't speak, but the act felt like defiance, like we were painting over more than just words. The next few days were a tightrope. Elena's shifts got longer, the station buzzing with reports of vandalism and anonymous threats. I kept my head down, working in the garage, but every creak of the door made me jump. Marla noticed, of course. You're in deep, aren't you? She said one morning, sliding me a coffee. Something like that, I muttered, avoiding her eyes. She's worth it, Marla said, not a question. But you gotta decide if you're ready to fight for this. For her. I didn't answer, but her words stuck with me. That night, Elena showed up at the garage out of uniform, her face drawn. I got a warning from the chief, she said, leaning against my workbench. Told me to keep my personal life out of the job. Said it's causing tension. I felt a surge of anger, not at her but at this town, at the world. That's bullshit, I snapped. They can't tell you who to be. They can, she said quietly. And they will, if we're not careful. I stepped closer, my hands itching to touch her, to ground us both. Then we'll be careful. But I'm not letting you go, Elena. Not because of them. Her eyes searched mine like she was looking for a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Then she kissed me, desperate and raw, like we were running out of time. And maybe we were. The breaking point came a week later. Another council meeting, another shouting match over the flag. This time the kid with the rainbow pin wasn't alone. More young people showed up, holding signs, chanting for change. But the opposition was louder, angrier, fueled by the vandalism and the rumors about Elena and me. I sat near the front, my hands clenched, Elena beside me in civilian clothes. When the mayor called for comments, she stood, her voice steady despite the glares. I'm a cop, she said. My job is to protect everyone in this town, not just the ones who agree with me. That flag isn't about politics. It's about people. People like me. People like you. The room erupted, some cheering, some booing. I grabbed her hand, squeezing tight, my heart pounding with pride and fear. But then a bottle sailed through the air, shattering against the wall behind us. Chaos broke out, shouts, shoving, chairs toppling. Elena pulled me behind her, her cop instincts kicking in. Stay close, she said, her voice calm but urgent. We pushed through the crowd out to the parking lot, where a small group of protesters waited, their faces twisted with hate. Get out of our town, one shouted, a man I recognized from the truck that night. He stepped forward, fists clenched, but Elena didn't flinch. Back off, she said, her voice like steel. Or I'll arrest you right now. He laughed, but he didn't move closer. The crowd dispersed, but the damage was done. As we stood there, catching our breath, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about fighting for something bigger. The bottle's shatter echoed in my head for days. A reminder that Willow Creek wasn't just a sleepy town, it was a battleground. Elena and I barely had time to breathe, caught between her patrols and my garage, dodging glares and whispers wherever we went. But every night we found each other, stealing moments that felt like defiance against the world. One evening we sat on my apartment's fire escape, the summer heat fading into a cool breeze. Elena leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, her hair tickling my neck. You ever think about leaving? She asked, her voice soft but heavy. Every day, I admitted, staring at the stars. But then I look at you and, I don't know. Leaving feels like giving up. She turned to face me, her eyes searching. What are we doing, Riley? This town's tearing itself apart, and we're in the middle of it. I cupped her face, my thumb brushing her cheek. We're fighting, I said. For us. For that kid with the rainbow pin. For anyone who's ever felt like they don't belong. Her lips met mine, slow and certain, like she was sealing a vow. But the moment was cut short by her radio cracklinga vandalism call at the high school. She sighed, pulling away. I'll be back, she said, kissing my forehead before heading out. I didn't go back inside. I sat there, the night air sharp against my skin, wondering how long we could keep this up. The high school was a mess. Spray paint covered the lockers, more slurs, more hate. Elena was there when I arrived, her face a mask of control, but I could see the strain in her eyes. The kid with the rainbow pin, Jay. I'd learned their name, was stood nearby, their shoulders slumped. They did this because of me, Jay said, their voice barely audible. No, Elena said firmly, kneeling to meet their eyes. They did this because they're scared. Scared of change, scared of you being you. That's not your fault. I watched her, my heart swelling. She wasn't just a cop, she was a lifeline. I stepped closer, putting a hand on Jay's shoulder. She's right. You're stronger than they'll ever be. Jay nodded, tears brimming, and I felt a surge of protectiveness. This wasn't just about me and Elena anymore. It was about Jay, about Marla, about every person in this town who deserved to live without fear. But the vandalism was just the start. The next day, Elena's squad car was keyed, deep scratches spelling out words I won't repeat. Her chief called her in, his face grim. "You're on desk duty until this blows over," he said, according to Elena. "People are talking, Martinez. You're making it hard for the department." She told me this over coffee at the diner, her hands wrapped tight around her mug. "They're punishing me for being me," she said, her voice low. "For being with you." I reached across the table, taking her hand. "Then we fight back. Together." We started small. A meeting at Marla's diner, just a handful of us. Jay, a few of their friends, Marla, and a teacher who'd quietly supported the pride flag. We planned a rally, not a protest, but a celebration. A chance to show Willow Creek that love wasn't something to hide. Elena was hesitant at first. "If I do this, I could lose my job," she said one night, pacing my apartment. "My pension, my place here, everything." I grabbed her hand, stopping her. "And if you don't? What do you lose then?" She looked at me, her eyes fierce and scared all at once. "You," she said. "I'd lose you." I pulled her close, my lips finding hers. "You're not losing me," I whispered. "Not ever." The rally was set for Saturday in the town square. We spread the word quietly through flyers and whispers, not sure who'd show up. By Friday, the tension in Willow Creek was palpable. More graffiti appeared, more threats. Someone slashed my bike's tires, leaving a note, "Leave or else." Elena found me in the garage, staring at the damage. "Riley," she said, her voice breaking, "this is my fault." "No," I snapped, tossing the note aside. "This is their fault. And we're not backing down." She nodded, but I saw the fear in her eyes. Not for herself, but for me. For us. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of day that should have felt hopeful. The town square was set up with a small stage, rainbow flags fluttering in the breeze. Jay and their friends hung streamers, their laughter cutting through the nervous energy. Marla brought coffee and donuts, her way of saying she was all in. Elena stood beside me, out of uniform, her hand in mine. "You ready for this?" she asked. "Are you?" I shot back, squeezing her hand. She smiled, that same unguarded smile that had hooked me from the start. "With you?" "Yeah." The crowd started small, maybe 20 people, mostly kids and a few allies. But as the morning went on, more came. Families, older folks, even some faces I'd seen shouting at the council meetings. They didn't all agree, but they were there, listening. Jay took the stage first, their voice shaking but strong, telling their story. Then the teacher, then Marla. When it was Elena's turn, she stepped up, her shoulders squared. "I'm a cop," she said, her voice carrying across the square. "I swore to protect this town. But I'm also a woman who loves another woman. And I'm done hiding that." The crowd was silent for a moment. Then a cheer went up, led by Jay. I felt tears prick my eyes, not just for her words but for what they meant. She was choosing me, choosing us, in front of everyone. But then I saw him, the man from the truck, standing at the edge of the crowd, his face twisted with rage. He wasn't alone. A group of men stood with him, their arms crossed, their eyes cold. My stomach dropped. "Elena," I whispered, tugging her sleeve. "Trouble." She followed my gaze, her cop instincts kicking in. "Stay here," she said, starting toward them. "No way," I said, following her. "We do this together." The man from the truck, Carl, I'd learned his name, was stood at the edge of the rally, his buddies flanking him like a wall of bad intentions. The air in the town square thickened, the cheerful chatter fading as heads turned. Elena's hand tightened on mine, her cop training kicking in, but I could feel her pulse racing under my fingers. "Stay calm," she whispered, her eyes locked on Carl. "Let me handle this." "No," I said, stepping forward with her. "We're in this together, remember?" Carl's sneer widened as we approached. "Well, look at this," he drawled, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "The cop and her girlfriend, thinking they can shove their agenda down our throats." The word hit like a slap, but Elena didn't flinch. "No agenda, Carl," she said, her voice steady as steel. "Just people trying to live their lives. You got a problem with that, take it up with me." He laughed, a harsh, grating sound, and took a step closer. The crowd shifted, some backing away, others inching forward, phones out, recording. Jay stood frozen on the stage, their eyes wide. I wanted to run, to grab Elena and get the hell out, but her grip on my hand kept me rooted. "You're a disgrace to that badge," Carl spat, his buddies nodding like a pack of dogs waiting for a signal. This town doesn't need your kind. Enough, I snapped, my voice cutting through the tension. I didn't plan to speak, but the words spilled out, raw and unfiltered. You don't get to decide who belongs here. Not you, not your friends, not anyone. We're not going anywhere. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some cheers, some grumbles. Carl's face reddened, his fists clenching, but before he could respond, Marla pushed through, her silver hoops glinting. You heard her, she said, planting herself between us and Carl. This is Willow Creek, not your personal playground. Back off. More people stepped forward, Jay, the teacher, a couple of parents I didn't know. The tide was turning, not with fists or shouts, but with bodies, with presence. Carl's buddies hesitated, their bravado faltering. He glared at Elena, then me, but the fight was draining out of him. This ain't over, he muttered, turning and stalking off, his crew trailing behind. The crowd exhaled, the tension snapping like a cut wire. Elena pulled me close, her breath shaky against my hair. You okay? She whispered. Yeah, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You. She nodded, but her eyes were distant, like she was already bracing for the next battle. The rally didn't end in triumph, but it didn't end in defeat either. People stayed, shared stories, laughed, cried. The rainbow flags stayed up, fluttering defiantly in the breeze. By dusk, the square was quiet, just a few stragglers cleaning up. Elena and I sat on the stage, our legs dangling, sharing a thermos of Marla's coffee. You were incredible today, I said, nudging her shoulder. She smiled, but it was tired. So were you. I didn't expect you to. I don't know. Stand up like that. I shrugged, my cheeks warming. Guess you're rubbing off on me. Her hand found mine, her fingers lacing through. Riley, I don't know what happens next. The chief's not happy, and people like Carl aren't going away. I know, I said, my throat tight. But we're not either. She looked at me, her eyes soft but fierce. You mean that? I leaned in, kissing her slow, letting the world fall away. Yeah, I whispered against her lips. I mean it. The weeks that followed were a slow climb. Elena went back to work, but the chief kept her on desk duty, a silent punishment. The vandalism stopped, but the whispers didn't. Carl and his crew kept their distance, but their glares followed us everywhere. Still, something had shifted in Willow Creek. The pride flag went up at the courthouse, a small victory but a real one. Jay started a queer youth group at the high school, and Marla's diner became an unofficial safe space, always packed with kids wearing rainbow pins. Elena and I found a rhythm. Mornings in the garage, evenings on my fire escape, nights tangled in each other's arms. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever is, but it was ours. One night as we lay in bed, the moonlight spilling across her face, she told me about her mom, how she'd come out to her years ago, how her mom had hugged her and said, "Love is love, Mija." She'd like you, Elena said, her fingers tracing my jaw. She'd say you're trouble, but the good kind. I laughed, pulling her closer. And you? What do you say? She kissed me, soft and sure. I say you're the best thing that's ever pulled over for me. Months later, at the first anniversary of the rally, Willow Creek felt different, not fixed, but healing. The town square was packed again, this time with more faces, more flags, more hope. Elena stood on the stage in uniform, her badge shining. She'd been reinstated to patrol, a small win after months of fighting. I stood in the crowd, my heart full, watching her speak about community, about courage, about love. When she finished, she found me, pulling me into a hug that felt like home. We did this, she whispered. No, I said, smiling. We're doing this. Every day. And as the crowd cheered, as the flags waved, I knew she was right. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living loud, proud, and together. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and so were we. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.